Hello, and thank you for joining another Quintessential Roots podcast. Um, if you are new here to this podcast, please like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you can get an update on all the latest podcasts. Here on these podcasts, we talk about all things hypnosis or any other modalities that heal the mind, body, and spirit. So today we have our guest, and I'll bring him on. Anthony, please introduce yourself.
Well, thank you so much. First of all, I want to say thank you, Renee, for having me on the show. I really appreciate the opportunity. Just to let your viewers know, my name is Anthony Contreras. I'm a certified hypnotherapist. I'm also very close to completing my Associate of Occupational Studies in Mind-Body Psychology with HMI. I have worked with a lot of different populations, including at-risk youth, LGBTQ+. I've worked with the homeless population. I've worked with substance abuse users. I've worked with newly diagnosed HIV and countless others.
Yeah, that is really commendable. So tell me, Anthony, how did you get into this work? What made you want to even follow this path?
Wow, it's a very loaded question. I really growing up, I never really saw myself getting into this field. Although I think I always had a certain drive towards it. But really my background was in acting. I wanted to be an actor and I wanted to be a filmmaker, and that was my life's passion, and that's what I wanted to do. And then life kind of threw me a little bit of a a little sideways kind of smack in the head. When I was 22, I was diagnosed with HIV. And this was back in, I think, 97. No, yeah, it was 97. Mm-hmm. So it kind of threw me off my path. And I had to take a lot of time to really come to terms with that, and come to terms with my sexuality. And all of that led me to really taking it serious and wanting to help other people on their journey in life. And I've never regretted it. I thoroughly enjoy it. This is so rewarding. It's a rewarding field to be in, to be able to empower others to heal themselves. And really, that's what it's about.
So, Anthony, what age were you when you came to terms with your sexuality?
What age? Let's see. I knew when I was younger. I guess I really considered myself bisexual up until about the age of 21, and then that's when it really kind of. It was like, no, I think I think I'm gay, and so from then on. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that. So. Absolutely. We are talking about revealing your true self, revealing your authentic self. Yes. So how does that factor into, how does self-image, self-concept affect self-esteem?
How does it affect self-esteem? I think we have to start with maybe the basics first and really kind of get an understanding of what self-esteem really is.
Yeah.
I think when we have self-image, it's how we view ourselves, based on our past experiences, based on relationships, all of this, we have this concept. And I think that's the self-concept, is this how we view ourselves. Others may have a different view of us and may see us in a different light. That's the way it is. But when it comes to self-esteem, really that's about how you feel about who you are. And so one is an image, and it's more based in statistics. I'm a male, 5'3". I'm of Latino descent. Okay, those are facts. Those are all great. But who am I? who am I without those things, and how do I feel about those things that I discover? To me, that's the basis of self-esteem, and it can be tricky when there's conflict there.
Yeah, exactly. So then, how is it developed?
Self-esteem.
Yeah.
Well, self-esteem is really about self-love and what we could call self-respect. And it's really the appreciation of self and seeing yourself in a positive light. But a lot of times our self-esteem is already dictated to us at a very early age. We develop our self-esteem through our parents, guardians, siblings, teachers, people around us, and so it's very easy to have that damaged, because I don't think people are very fully aware or conscious of how powerful their messages and their actions are to a developing child. And so there's a lot of things that are being done that we're unaware of, and it can have very lifelong consequences for individuals.
Yes. And, Susan Otzman, who is a leading professional in this area, she says that self-esteem has 6 layers. And that is physical, psychological, intellectual, skills, dimension, moral, and sexual. So it's all tied in together. And those layers have to be dealt with in order to have wholeness, have everything integrated into having a positive self-esteem. What would you say about that?
Well, first of all, I'm not familiar with Susan nor her work, so I don't feel comfortable making any statements about that. It sounds great. It sounds wonderful. I think in the process of integration, I think the first thing we have to really acknowledge is that it is a process. And for somebody who has low self-esteem or low self-worth or low self-image, it's difficult to ever even conceive or the concept that you're other than. And so integration is not a one-stop shop. It's a process, and a lot of times, I always recommend get professional help, because it is a process, and you have to be able to see yourself with honesty and with truth, and be able to acknowledge your personal experiences. And I don't think there's one way of integration of all of these things. I think everybody's unique and everybody's different, and their experiences are so personal and subjective that there's no clear one way of doing this work. It's the progression. And so you kind of have to fall in love with the idea of the process, and I know sometimes that's difficult. Some people, based on childhood trauma, or what we call now adverse childhood experiences growing up, they have trust issues, or and it takes different forms. It could be abandonment, it could be neglect, it could be physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, and none of these are, in my opinion, are very clearly defined. It's kind of one. How do you separate emotional abuse from mental abuse? So it's there's not. Everything kind of blends together. And so there's no cookie cutter way of doing this type of work, of working with somebody. And we're talking about a spectrum of people with self-esteem or low self-esteem. There are some people that it's not too much of an issue, so they're on this side of it. And then there's some that have very severe self-esteem issues. And so it just depends on the person and how they want to work through it. That's my take on it.
I like what you said, to seek out professional help, because a lot of people think that they can do it on their own. You see these social media posts, oh, you need to build your self-esteem and do it, but it's not that easy. It's not that easy.
No, it's not. And I think you bring up a really good point, which is let me rephrase this. Let me say it this way. Can you do it by yourself? Can you? Absolutely. Should you? It's different. It's not an easy process, because a lot of times we are so inside of our own experience that we don't have an unbiased look at our lives or ourselves. And so sometimes it helps to have somebody on the outside of what we see and what we experience to give reflection, and we can then ask questions. I can say, hey, Renee, what were some of the things that you experienced growing up, and how did that affect you? I think one of the ways we can begin the process, and some of the ways that I've begun the process in my own life, was to really look at what I consider to be the truth. And the truth it's a process of allowing yourself to believe that you were born perfect. And by perfect, I mean the imperfection of who you are is what makes you perfect. And for some people, that's too big of a leap. And so there's steps to getting to a place of feeling that way. But again, I mean, if we're going to talk about how does self-esteem get damaged, there's two common ways. One, we kind of mentioned, which was adverse childhood experiences or trauma growing up. The other is what we call labels and thoughtless messages, and I kind of like working with somebody new on the idea and the concept of understanding and acknowledging labels. And so I'm going to try and explain it to you this way. So before, when you were born, they didn't know your gender at birth until you were actually born. Now we have reveal parties all over the place. But what we're learning is that there is so much expectations put onto gender. And that right off the bat is the start of self-esteem, whether it's going to be a good thing and helpful, or it's going to be a negative and it's going to be hurtful. And so in looking at it, you really want to be able to be conscious of the idea that we do have certain society norms, as it is currently, of what it means to be a boy and what it means to be a girl. And if you're a boy, well, let me ask you this, Renee. When you think in a generalized way of how society would view boy, what sort of concepts come up for you?
You're talking to a former tomboy.
And that's okay, because we're talking generalities. We're not talking specific to your story, but we're talking about how does society as a whole still view the concept of boy and girl.
Mm-hmm. They have specific things that they're supposed to do, not play with dolls. They're supposed to be out there playing softball, football, getting dirty, doing all kinds of stuff. And, when I was growing up, I had boy cousins that were my age, and we were all growing up together, and we were babysat together. And so I had to play with them. So I wanted to look like them. So I dressed like them. Mm-hmm. But then, they would do some outlandish stuff that I wasn't going to even attempt because it was stupid, first of all. Like climbing buildings and I'm like, no, I'll see y'all later. But as I started school, they demanded that I wear a dress, and I didn't like
Oh, wow.
dresses.
Wow.
And so that was really upsetting to me because I did not want to wear a dress every day. But it was mandatory when I went to school.
And that's
So
exactly
I
kind
guess,
of what we're talking about a little bit,
mhm,
right? Is that think about it this way: is that before you're even born, now that they know your gender at birth, that there was a whole list of expectations that go along with it. And so for you, it was wearing dresses, playing with dolls, uh, heterosexual, getting married, having children, being a wife and a mother. These are expectations that are put onto a baby before they're even born. And so when you come into this world, there's these things that we kind of expect and look for.
mhm.
And so what happens when, okay, you're not a heterosexual, or you don't want to wear dresses or play with dolls? How then do you feel about yourself when you're looking at the expectations that your parents, your guardians, society is placing on you? Well, at that point, you start looking at yourself and saying, okay, well, I'm not that. And because I'm not that, there is this feeling of I'm not right. And that feeling of I'm not right can lead to I'm not good. And now we internalize ourselves, especially if we get those kind of messages constantly. If you're constantly bombarded with, uh, oh, but sweetie, you should, I love it when you wear dresses. You look so much cuter when you do. Or, oh, you're not putting on makeup, but you're already 14, those kind of things. And it's like, instead of allowing the child to be who they are when they come into this world, we tend to have expectations, and it's those expectations that I think, are the start of self-esteem, and especially for men. I think men have really been raised with a raw deal. I have to say it. Not that girls don't. Um, I think when it comes to men, we are raised to believe that emotion equals weakness. And I think there couldn't be a bigger lie that is perpetuated in society as that.
Yeah.
And so men grow up thinking, okay, I'm supposed to be tough. I'm supposed to be straight. I'm supposed to like blue, not pink. I'm wearing pink. You're supposed to, be good and at athletics. You're supposed to be good with the girls. And so what if I'm not those things? What if I'm sensitive? Well, then you get labeled what? Crybaby. And then you get told messages like, man up. Or you get messages like, you're going to cry, go to your room and cry. And so the underlying message that men receive is it's not okay to feel your emotions. It's shameful, go hide. Or don't experience pain. And I think that's a huge disservice just for society, because men eventually have to integrate with women in some way, shape, or form, whether it's through the workplace or in personal relationships or family members, And so you have this wounded individual who feels less than uh, and tries to put on this portrayal of who they think they should be based on everybody else's expectations.
Right.
And to me, that's the damaging part. That's the damaging part.
Yeah. And there's, like for the boys, people don't want them playing with dolls, but get this, they don't know how to be good fathers because of that. Like if they had a
Mhm.
doll, when with my children, for instance, I had dolls, and they had to treat that doll like a baby. I said, you treat your baby like this. You have to be gentle. You have to do this. So they learned through those little scenarios how to nurture, including their son,
Absolutely. I
including my
love
son.
that. I love
And
that. That's excellent.
it's a little step, but each step, and then I was a preschool owner, so they got to see the
Mhm.
other kids and how how I responded to them. I made my children take self-development classes in high school so that they learned how to be good parents. So you don't automatically know how to be a good parent, first of all.
No, and you don't automatically know how to be a good person either. I
Right.
mean, and that also can skew who we are, because when you think about it, everything that you know and believe, especially believe, is not your own idea. It was taught
Right.
to you. It
Right.
was an influenced idea. So your thoughts aren't your own thoughts. They're somebody else's thoughts that weren't planted into your mind. And then with reinforcement, now they're yours. And so you go through life thinking that this is how I think, but you're not thinking for yourself. You're thinking the way somebody else wanted you to think. And they want you to
Right.
perceive life the way they perceived life. And
Right.
the key is to first acknowledge that,
Mm-hmm.
and it's, you don't have to like it or dislike it. And so there's a process that we know of, and it's called ACT. I love it. It's
Oh,
called acceptance.
before you get into ACT,
Okay.
I want you to unpack some of the other stuff you were mentioning. So I like the fact that you said people with self-esteem issues need to have the view of the other, and that other should be a professional because they know what they're doing, not someone off the street that has their opinion, you know.
Right.
And then when we do this as hypnotherapists, we're able to take those things that affected you and your self-esteem, and we're able to put you in hypnotherapy and reprogram those neural pathways so that you can become,
Right.
integrated more.
And yes, and that goes into what we would call, your narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Is that your mind writes this story as you live, and every experience, because it's seen through your eyes and felt through your emotions and sensed by your body, it creates this story. And so sometimes we get stuck in the story. I think that's one of the damaging things is, can we be flexible enough to say, okay, this happened to me, but I can push that to the side. I'm not going to get rid of it, but I feel safe enough to push it just to the side, just a little bit, so I can introduce another thought in a way that might reframe that experience, because it's how we react to that same story that we repeat in our mind of who we are that can keep us very stuck. And we want to be able to be more like water. We want to be fluid with and be able to take in new information and then question it for ourselves and say, do I agree with that? Does it resonate with me? How do I feel about that? Okay. And then you integrate new information. But I'm sure everybody out there knows somebody that has a belief that I know how life is. This is exactly how life is, and no one can tell me different. And anybody who challenges that, well, then it's a battle of wills, and it's a conflict, and it's like, no, you just don't know. You'll learn. You don't know. You'll learn. And maybe they're true, maybe they're not. And I love the idea of maybe what's true for one person isn't true for another.
Right.
And allowing people to have and appreciate and accept their own viewpoints and their own experiences. And that's really where we need to get, is to this place where it's okay that people can have different opinions, different thoughts than you, but you can still appreciate them for who they are.
Right.
And that's a challenge. That's not really, especially I think right now with cancel culture. I think it's a very difficult thing to really acknowledge that it is possible, but that it's really difficult and it's challenging.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's go back to some of the things that you mentioned about how self-esteem is damaged.
Yes.
We talked about the thoughtless things during childhood. Okay.
Now, well, let's cover that just a little bit, because the thoughtless things are the messages that you heard that you didn't ask for. So, like, for instance, for me, I, at a very young age, And I don't know why. I remember why. I remember the incident. I was like 5. And but I was told, "You ruin everything." And that stuck with me throughout my whole life. And I didn't realize to what degree that impacted the choices I make and whether I take risks or not, and that led to a lot of self-sabotage in my life. I could create beautiful things in my life and bring beautiful things, but as soon as I got to a certain point, I smashed it. I would just lose it all because I didn't feel like I was worthy enough to maintain it because the message was, I ruin everything. I'm not
Mhm.
supposed to
Mhm.
enjoy the fruits of my labor. That's
Mhm.
just what I do. That was my narrative. So those kind of messages, or a lot of people may grow up saying or hearing, you're stupid, you're worthless, you're good for nothing. These are the messages that really get into that subconscious mind at a very young age, and they write that narrative, and now it's so ingrained in us that we believe it.
Mhm.
Because we believe
Now,
it so much, our mind says it's true, even though it's not.
mhm.
It's
And
not true.
one thing that I had growing up was, oh, you're so tall. I come from a family. My
Yeah.
mom's family is very short. First of all, they are really
Okay.
short. My
So
grandma
am
is
I. So I can
4'9".
relate.
My grandma's 4'9", and her
Okay.
kids weren't that much taller than her. And the men in the family reached 5'6". A
Mhm.
couple of them were tall. But let me tell you this. So all my life I heard that growing up. And I would just get to the point where I wouldn't tell people my age. So they wouldn't say, oh, you're tall for your age. People who aren't even part of your family make thoughtless comments.
Yeah.
Oh,
Mhm.
you're big, or oh, people need to think about what they're saying to other people, especially children. So when I had children, I knew I might have tall children. So when people made
Okay.
that statement, I corrected them. I said, well, what do you expect from a tall mother? I had to advocate for my children because
Sure.
I wasn't going to have them going through what I did, you know?
And
So that
and
is so true.
and to play devil's advocate, and this is the thing about the thoughtless messages, is that they didn't realize that they were
That it
hurting their
was
feelings.
rude. Right.
They didn't, that was not their intention, was to hurt. It might have been just an observation. It's an introduction of how do we create a conversation? How do we begin a connection? And so you take the obvious thing and maybe you go with it. I don't know if that's true all the way with every single experience, but it definitely sounds like it really had a strong effect on you growing up.
Yeah, because I mean, look at the world. There's tall people, short people, in
Mhm.
between people. There's fat people, thin people,
Yeah.
skin, whatever. So the world wasn't meant to be all one size.
And I
So
think, oh, go ahead.
that was my opinion. So I knew that people weren't thinking about what they said, but I
Right.
had to correct them. Just like you correct racism, I corrected them on that. Because then they would think about the next time they wanted to say a thoughtless comment.
Yeah, you're right. And that's the mindfulness, is just because we are on automatic pilot, because of our subconscious mind and that narrative. We don't think, we're not mindfully present. We just kind of go through the motions, and you be surprised at how automatic your behavior is. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, so all of a sudden have somebody approach you in a different way and respond in a way that, oh, wait a minute. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that. Like I apologize. You're right. That was wrong with me. Um, Without getting defensive, but that means that I have to have a healthy self-esteem where I'm okay receiving that information.
Mhm.
So the thoughtless messages, you're right, they're all over and they continue into
Right.
your adulthood.
So then,
The,
then some of the adverse childhood experiences you mentioned, neglect, abandonment, emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse.
Mhm.
Let's kind of since you actually work with the LGBTQAI plus
Plus.
community.
Mhm.
How does that affect? How tell us the impact of that with them growing up? And you kind of explained it so far, kind of with the gender issues, but can you go into
Yeah,
detail
well,
about that?
once we bring in, sexual orientation, gender identity, um, I definitely believe that definitely society is on a good wave of moving in the right direction. Are we there yet? No. Do we have a lot to go? Yeah, definitely, probably. But that shift is happening. And so I try and focus on the positive of the situation, not the negative. I want to see that, yes, people are more open to having these type of discussions like we're having right now, and that
Mhm.
we're able to talk about this and nobody's, hush or keeping their mouth closed or hiding, but being able to accept and appreciate and acknowledge. I think acknowledgement is always the first step. You have to be able to um, allow yourself to see something if you ever want the hope that it can be different or that it can change. I think it's very unique for the LGBTQAI plus community. At least in my, I'm 47, so my generation, it was not as acceptable at all as much as it is currently to have a child that is transgender or have a gay child. But there are still families, based on culture, based on religion, that ostracize and push their children away. And for a child to get that message that there's something wrong with you is the worst thing you could ever do to anybody, because there's nothing wrong with you. Your experiences are unique. So you're unique in that sense. But to say somebody is wrong, um, it really negates their perception of life. It negates their personal experiences in life. It negates um, their pain and their joy. And so we have to be mindful, as you said, of how we contribute to that or don't contribute to that. Um, and so, yeah, it's still a difficult thing. Coming out is still a very kind of personal and very challenging kind of thing. You still run the risk of saying, are people going to accept me? And I think that's very difficult for children to um, do. It's a challenging process. Are
Mhm.
we better for it? Possibly, possibly. I don't know. Some people would say yes. Some people would say no. I would say that everything that doesn't destroy us is there to strengthen us.
Mm, mm,
Gives us a little bit stronger. And by stronger, I don't mean like physical strength, and I don't mean not expressing emotion or feeling emotion. I think it's just the opposite. It's okay to say, yeah, my feelings were hurt. I was hurt by certain statements. I was hurt growing up. That vulnerability, that's the real strength. And so we need to nurture that in all people, is to say it is the vulnerability that connects us to one another. It's not the perfect person. The perfect person we can't relate to. So you could look at the perfect person and somewhere in the back of your mind, you're going like, I don't buy it. Something's wrong with them. So we don't trust them. There's an inherent, like, they're not as good as they claim. But when you run into somebody who acknowledges um, their vulnerability and is able to speak about it openly and how they've hurt, um, you're going like, oh, okay, I felt that too. I felt rejection. I know what that feels like. That's horrible. And now you're understanding. You can't judge if you're open to understanding.
right. And my experience is kind of similar, even though I'm not part of the community. My family has always had gifts in healing, right?
Oh, wonderful.
And I left the church, let's see, I think it was 2003. And when I left, my gifts started opening up, my hands heated up. Now, I used the gift for my children, but I never used it for anyone else. And I came from both sides of my family, my dad's side and my mom's side, were deeply entrenched in the church. Now, my grandmother, though, she did do healing in the church. She used her gift in the church. But I had wanted to, kind of like come out as a light worker. And it took me so long to make that transition to come out as a light worker, because I didn't know if my family was going to disown me completely, or whether they, I didn't know what to expect. And I valued them. And see, I wasn't particularly close to my father's family. And I had just made some ties to them. And I was thinking, oh, I might lose them again. Right. So then as the years went on, and it had been over 10 years, I'm like, you know what? They're either going to like me or not like me. I don't care anymore. I'm just going to be me, who I authentically am, and come out as a light worker. To my surprise, there were a lot of my family members who felt the same way. And people who my messages resonated with, they joined me, so but I do know the transition to becoming your authentic self is very difficult. So I think I would say for most people, you need help to come out. I'm unique because
for coming out, yes. I think you need support. I think everything goes back to feeling safe. Do you feel safe in your own body? Do you feel safe in your own environment? Do you feel safe in your family? If you don't do it. Think of your safety first. You have to love yourself first. That's the first step, is loving it and accepting and appreciating yourself first. That is the whole point of authentic self, is being able to go through the process of, like an onion, you got to pull back these layers of expectations that were placed on you, so that you can reveal who you were born as, so that you can get to a place where you get to define yourself based on who you are, instead of what everybody else wanted to say you were or should be. It's getting rid of the shoulds, and saying, I'm not that, and I don't need to be that. I'm not that, I don't need to be that. I'm not this, I'm not that. They said I was this, but I'm not. You're lazy. Are you lazy, or you just, it's not interesting to you? I don't know, but maybe that's an important question to ask. And we can do that process. That's one of the simplest processes, is that when we are in a place where we're safe enough to think of what we call reframes, and to look at our experiences from a different angle. Some people aren't there. And so it's a journey to get to that place. But when we are there, we can start asking the question, well, wait a minute, what were the messages that I was told? And is it true? Do I ruin everything? Do I? No. And then you can kind of question the source a little bit too. Where did I get this message from? Well, I got it from my family. Okay. Well, if I got it from my brother and my sister, and they're like 4 and 6 years older than me, and I'm 5 years old, how old were they? 11, 12, around there? What do they know? They didn't have a degree in child development or child psychology. My parents didn't. And so they didn't know what they were doing. And so maybe their opinion of me is just that. It's an opinion. but it's not true.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can begin the process by again, what was I told? Is that really true? And we really want to practice on the reframe of saying, question it. It's okay to question it, and then question the source. That's the important thing, because that gives us just a smidgen of doubt where we can say, is it possible they were wrong? Is it possible that I'm not the things that they've claimed I am? That's enough to begin the process of then exploring the other reframe of, wait a minute, no, I was never those things. They saw me as that, but that doesn't mean that I was or that I am. And now you get to redefine yourself and say, no, I'm a light worker. I've always been a light worker. And I value and accept and appreciate that I am a light worker. It's a gift. And if the universe has given me this gift, it's for a purpose. So how can I best use this gift? Because we all have those gifts. But we have to allow ourselves to acknowledge them and see them, even if others weren't able to recognize that or nurture those. We have the ability to start focusing on that and acknowledging and nurturing that about ourselves. That's the process, in my opinion. One of the ways that we can begin the process.
Well said. Very well said. Now, can you explain your process of ACT?
ACT, yeah. Not my process. I use ACT. It's acceptance commitment therapy. I love it. Most people are probably familiar with CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. That one's a little bit more cut and dry, but ACT factors in emotion more. And I usually start off with somebody and ask them what is their definition of acceptance. And I usually get, sometimes it varies, but more often than not, it's that things were okay. I have to be able to be okay with it. And I explained to them that in terms of ACT, we want to redefine acceptance and maybe see it more as acknowledgement. And so what we want to do is we want to defuse the idea of what is with how we feel about it. Because normally we just lump it together. And so if we have very negative feelings about something, we can get defensive. And now we're not able to look or explore or learn about experiences or things in our life. But when you can separate the two and say, and here's the example I love to use. So, Anthony, can you acknowledge that you are 5'3" tall? Can I acknowledge that? Can I accept that? Well, I can acknowledge yes. That's a separate question than, how do you feel about being 5'3"? Well, I hate it. I hate it. I wish I was 5'6". I would love 5'6". 5'8" would be great for me. So my feelings on an issue is judgment, whether it's a positive or a negative. It's still a judgment. So we want to be able to separate the judgment. And now we can just pick up and explore the what is. And we can really kind of delve into that. And then once we're able to explore, we decide, okay, well, what are my morals? What are my ethics? What makes me me that are fundamentally good? And then does this belief or experience or behavior, is it bring me closer in alignment to my morals and ethics? Or does it take me further away from them? And we always want to move closer in alignment to our morals and ethics, because that's apparently, we bring in more happiness that way. And it reinforces our own moral compass. And so I love working with ACT. It gives people the freedom to explore pain. It gives them the freedom to explore situations, people, behaviors, without the judgment, the self-judgment. Because if we have low self-esteem, we have a very big inner critic that sits on our shoulder that wants to tell us what we've done wrong all the time. And so to put that one on mute a little bit and say, I know, I know, it's okay. I'm going to look at this anyway. It's empowering, right? Because a lot of times we dictate our lives and our behavior based on that little inner critic that's whispering in our ear. And this is a way to regain control of ourselves. And I think I had a client one time use this analogy. I loved it. Sometimes my inner critic is driving the bus and I'm in the back seat. I'm in the bus, but they're the one driving. And I don't want them to drive anymore. I want to be the one driving the bus. It's okay that they're on the bus, but they shouldn't be driving. And I like that because you do want to make friends with that inner critic because it's designed to keep you safe. It's a part of us. So we want to be able to embrace that aspect of us. But we also want to be able to challenge that if we need to and say, I know I'm used to doing things this way and it's always hurt me. Maybe I can try a new way. Maybe I can think a new way. Maybe it doesn't feel right. It's uncomfortable, but maybe uncomfortable is good because it means that I'm no longer the same. And again, that is just a process. It's a process of working with somebody.
Very good. So for the listening audience, if you have questions, feel free to ask them at this time. We love engagement. So if you have
questions, let's hear it.
Yes. So Anthony, my next question for you is, what are some of the things that a person can do to address self-esteem issues? And you've talked a lot about it, but what are some solutions?
I believe in journaling, and some people don't like or enjoy journaling. And so journaling as an umbrella could mean, sit down with a recorder, sit down with your phone, find an app where you can just record your voice and discover what you like about you. Ask yourself, what am I doing well in life? Let's not focus on what's not going well in life. Let's shift our perspective and our perception of self and focus on what we're doing right. Because yes, growing up, mom may have looked at report card and said, well, you got A, D. What do you mean a D? Why can't you be more like your sister? Your sister gets A's in history all the time. Why? What's with this D? Okay, well, they're focusing on the D instead of saying, look at all the A's. I'm so proud of you. That's okay. Maybe it's a little bit challenging. How can we help you? What do we need to do so that we can support you so we can get that D a little bit higher? And then we also have to understand that even in that situation, it's not between me, myself, getting the grade. It's the relationship between me and the instructor, the teacher, the professor. Are they delivering the information in a manner where I can receive it and get it? If I'm a visual person and they're having me read books, it's not going to work for me. So it's that relationship. And if we can see, in that example, I guess, of using grades, that it's not the child, it's the relationship between the child and the teacher. And whether they're on, you don't want a child to walk out feeling like they're stupid because they didn't get it. Why didn't they get it? And how can we help them better equip them so that they can get it? They're not the problem. The problem is the problem.
Exactly.
So I'm big on journaling. I'm big on, there's little exercises that you can do. I when it comes to behaviors or beliefs, one is you can, on a piece of paper, just write the belief, and then you make 2 columns of help and hurt. And by help, we don't mean how does it benefit your life. We're talking about what is the payoff in having this belief or in having this behavior. I push people away because, I don't care about them. Okay, well, what's the payoff? The payoff is I don't have to deal with other people's crap. Okay, but how does it hurt you is I'm isolated. I'm disconnected. I don't feel like anybody understands me. I'm alone. Okay, well, once we're looking at that and we can decide, okay, what then is this the belief and behavior we want to keep? if we're okay with it, and we're okay with all the things that it does to hurt us, because how we benefit is so much better, great, keep it. But if it's something that we don't want to do anymore, and we can see all of the reasons why it hurts us, well, then that sets up the most important thing, which is the power of choice. And that is the only power we have. We're born with it. We're going to die with it. You can't give it away. You have the ability to choose. You may not like your choices, but we know that action in the form of a choice is very powerful and empowering.
Very good. Is there anything you wanted to discuss today that we haven't talked about so far?
No, you know what? The only thing is I really do want to stress the idea of working with somebody. You know, sometimes what I've come to understand is that this process, there are a lot of self-help books out there. There's a lot of self-help kind of things that you can do. But if you're looking in terms of, and the way I've explained it is, if you're looking in terms of like a hotel, if the foundation is crooked, you're not going to feel it on the first 5 floors. You may feel it on the 10 floors. You may feel it on the 20 floors. You know, you're definitely going to feel it on the 80th floor. So the problem isn't knocking down the top layers of the building and then rebuilding. Sometimes we have to uproot everything that we know, and we have to fix the foundation of our belief system. And that can be a scary thing. So you want to make sure that you're working with somebody who is open to that idea and who's supportive and who's there to listen and is there to support.
Very good. All right. Well, Anthony, can you please let me go ahead, and I'm posting my information in the chat. So please feel free to like, subscribe, and share or follow. And then I'm going to put Anthony's information into the chat as well.
You know, if anybody ever, you know, if you just have questions, feel free to contact me. I think I'm easy to talk to. Maybe some people don't believe that, but it's true.
He is. He's very,
you know, and sometimes we just need to be heard, you know, and so if you need someone to listen, you know, I'd be honored. I'd appreciate it.
So Anthony, I know I have your information, but can you please put it in the chat?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, wait, I have it. I have it. Never mind.
Okay.
Okay, so 1 second. I'm going to put all of his contact information.
Very welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, so again, you can reach me at, I'm just going to say my number. My number is area code 626-269-9071. My name is Anthony. You can email me at Anthony@New Millennium Hypnotherapy, NU, millenniumhypnotherapy.com, or you can go to my website. You can reach me there. I also have some free downloadable worksheets if you're interested at my website at www.newmillenniumhypnotherapy.com. I'm sure you're going to find it in the comments and in the chat. So.
Very good.
Good luck to you.
Thank you for joining us today with your vast knowledge, and we appreciate it so much. So join us next Sunday with another Quintessential Roots podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, and you guys have a wonderful day.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, Renee.